Okay. Good morning, everyone. This week we're on week 3 of perspective, skies and flowers, and I'm going to do 2 videos this week, one of a stormy sky and one painting poppies. In each of the videos I'm going to use a lot of water and allow the paint to flow, so hopefully creating a nice washy result. So I hope that I'll, with one or the other of the videos, because you will have 2 to look at, one or the other will inspire you to paint nice and loosely this week. And I'm going to start with the stormy sky. I have my sky colours out, which are ultramarine blue, Payne's grey, a Winsor & Newton Payne's grey, because the artist quality has got blue in it, so it has to be a Winsor & Newton one, raw sienna and alizarin crimson. Okay, so I've already wetted my paper because I wanted it to soak in a little bit. I'm using my filbert brush, and I've put a little wash of the raw sienna everywhere, okay, because I want to go back to a creamy colour for the lights rather than white paper. I also have a block, and I'm actually going to tip my paper, having popped the block underneath so that I have some running down, hopefully, and that can be taken away if you feel you're getting too much of a run going on. So I haven't got a great deal of time to start and finish, so I'm hoping to be able to work quickly. I don't know what's going to happen exactly today. Your guess is as good as mine, but I do want to try to get this nice stormy sky happening and hopefully get some mountains in and perhaps some water. So fairly strong pigment because it's going to be diluted in the paper, because there's quite a lot of water on there. Okay, so in the centre of my palette here I've mixed alizarin crimson, a little bit of alizarin crimson with the Payne's grey to make this lovely sort of warm grey colour. And I'm just letting it run down into the dampened paper. I'm surprised this is crinkling. I used it before and it didn't, but that's typical, isn't it, when you don't want it to. So touching it as little as possible, but as you can see I'm allowing the perspective to happen by getting more closed up towards the bottom here, and I want some mountains behind here, so I'm going to try and keep it fairly simple at the bottom here, and a little bit drier because I won't have too much time to allow that to dry. So already I'm getting some lovely runs happening. When it's run enough for the moment, just flatten and see what happens. If you want it to move again, then either tip backwards if you want the paint to run back again, or sideways, or whatever, just slant it again. Have tissue ready, and I have got tissue, and I've even split my tissue so that it's softer, just little tiny bits, so I don't lose control here. But there's some lovely blends happening and some lovely runs already. So I'm going to try not to touch this too much. I quite like what's going on already. So a clean piece of tissue now if you want to go elsewhere. While it's still wet, you can obviously put more colour in, but if you can get it right in the first place, better still. Just soften that area there. So I can, if I wish now, just go back in and put a bit more strength maybe here. and let it float down again. I really like what's happening, so I'm going to try not to touch it too much more. Perhaps we just need a bit more depth of colour here, this side, using my nice mix of alizarin crimson and the Payne's grey, letting it run again. Right, so that's not looking too bad. I just love what happens in that area there, because it does look as if it's raining in that part of the sky, but some nice weather sky in the distance, which is always hopeful. So just take a bit away here. That's the bit that's going to be behind my mountain. So right, I'm not going to touch it anymore. I like it. Apart from to just dry the brush with your cloth or whatever, and just bring in a few little, now it's drier, this will work, a few little areas where the wind is blowing the sky around a bit. Okay, so that really works quite well. I'm not too unhappy with that at all. I'll hold it up so you can see areas of it where it's blended and gone and done quite nice things for me. Right, so I'm going to leave it now. Right, the trick is to make yourself leave it, because the temptation is to keep going back in and seeing different things, but just let it dry. I'm going to put the hairdryer on for just 1 second to dry the base here where I want to put the mountains, because they've got to be worked on dry paper. Excuse me. I think that's dry enough. So I've now got a flat brush which isn't rounded at the end, and I'm going to use my sky colours again, especially the alizarin and the Payne's grey mix, and pop in some mountains. We did cliffs last week. The cliffs dried up quite well, but I want to create some mountains this week. Okay, again touching it a little bit more than we did last week, but not more than we have to. Nice sharp tall mountains. Okay, and then before that dries, I'm going to put some water and bring that down, touching as little as possible, right down to the horizon. That was wet there, so be careful to allow yours to dry if you try this. And that's a shame. I wish that hadn't happened, but there we are, our demonstration. So there are some mountains. While it's wet, you can actually drop a little bit more in. I'll try and sharpen that up a bit. Shame. Wish that hadn't happened. I'm just going to put the hairdryer on again for 1 small second. I'm working wet, but I don't want it that wet. I just want to draw a little bit out to sort of shape and get some shape into these mountains a little bit. too wet at that end again. But hopefully you'll understand and get the message. Right, so I've got a few marks going on, so I've touched it more than I touched the hills last week. Hairdryer again. Obviously, if you do this, you'll have time to allow these areas to dry, okay? Now you could put more hills and mountains in front of that one when this lot's dry, but I haven't really got time for that. But it would look quite nice if you wanted to do that, and then you get even better perspective going on, okay? They're very pointy, aren't they? Right, so now we need maybe some foliage. So I'm going to get some really dark green foliage going on with a slightly dry brush, I think, so that it doesn't blend too much. Right, so I'm being very brave and going quite strong with my foliage, not worrying about going over the tape. Some tall trees there. And let the brush run out so that you get it slightly lighter this side. Nice tall trees there to bring the eye back into the picture perhaps. Okay, so they look okay. So now I have some distant trees, some nice mountains. They could be better, but another time. You get the idea of how to actually do them, and that's the main thing. Right, now we need a little bit of water, I think. So we can take this off. I'm using clean water. I don't know if I can still take a bit out of there, but it might be nice. You'll just have to practice and see if you can do particular things at particular times. So now I'm going to use a similar nice sky drying up here. It's got nice perspective and so on behind the mountains. So I'm going to use similar colours in the water as I used in the sky. Maybe put a little bit more blue in it, in that centre where I've got the Payne's grey, and make it quite watery, where I've got that mix going on. And I'm still using my very flat brush, and I'm actually just going to try and leave a little tiny line on the horizon, which helps with the perspective. If it closes up here and there, it doesn't matter. But I'm just dragging this across. You don't see very much in the distance in the way of light on the water, but as you come further forward, you obviously will. Nice. So your sky needs to reflect into the water. So where you've got a light patch in your sky, you need to try and think about bringing that down here too. And where you've got a darker area, bringing that in. Okay. But I'm just going to stop for a minute with this water and get a lighter tone of that foliage and just drop some of that in. As you see, I'm using my brush the other way up. I want to just drop that in there for some reflection, trying to simulate a little bit the shapes that I see in the actual foliage there, but not that much. It doesn't, matter too much. It's dried up a little bit down here. So and then just drag this through to get some movement in there. So now there's a nice little bit of reflection going on in my... It's better to do it when it's damp. Nice little bit of reflection going on in there. Okay, so that's enough really. And now I can carry on with the water. Because I'm using dry paper, I've got plenty of time to work on the water. Bearing in mind I need to remember where the lighter areas are, and keep that a little bit lighter and maybe even drier. But just washing across, but leaving some light in, is going to give you lovely, keeping it straight and fairly level. It's going to give nice movement in the water, but not too much. And when it's drier, you can actually go back and put a few darks in as well into the water for movement in the water if you wish. But you can't really do that when it's wet, so just leave that for now. So I don't know whether we ought to just try and put a bit of depth in where these mountains are here and there, but nothing too definite. Okay. Because they will be reflecting back down, I guess. So that actually looks quite nice. I'm making it up as I go along. But it's actually giving a little bit more interest into the water by doing this. Water doesn't mind being touched too much, unlike the sky. No, I think that's all right. That got a bit light up there. I think it just needed to be darker. So you can play around with the water quite a bit really to make sure you get what you want. But I think there's some nice shine on the water there. So I'm not unhappy. And I seem to have managed it in good time, which is good. So what you're going to have to be, let's just recap. Nice and wet for the sky, and allow the paint to float down by tipping, and making sure it's dry before you put the mountains in, which I didn't really have time to do properly. And while that's still damp but not wet, put some foliage in and then reflect that foliage back down into the water. Okay, so I think that's okay. So I'm going to leave you now, but come back again in a minute or two with a poppy to paint. Okay, thanks very much.